Sweet. Oh man, we got a bunch of people in here already. What's up, everyone? So we'll go ahead and go through. So we got Annette, we got Joe in here, Clayton, Muskrat, Chunky, Fishing with Billy. It's nice to see everybody. David, what's going on? Look at old Daryl in here. I appreciate everybody coming to the first ever Monster Monday. So to give y'all a little bit of a backstory, Monster Monday, we started that back when Real Beast first began 3 years ago. It was only on Facebook. We would take people's pictures and we would post them up and kind of give like a little nod to somebody's good fish. But we were a little too gung-ho in the beginning. Like we had something for every day of the week. And we got burnt out after about 6 months. It was just too much to keep up with for every single day. But now that we have an ability to go live, I thought a good one to bring back would be Monster Monday, where we bring in somebody and talk about one of their special or their biggest or their greatest catches. And then, of course, you see I got with me tonight for the first one, Joe from Chatt Cats, good buddy of mine. He's going to be answering questions later on after he finishes with his story, or if we see a really good question in between. So, Uncle Lou, hey, what's going on, bud? I see you in there. So, and I'm sorry if y'all get an echo from me. We had technical difficulties when I tried to start. Was losing Wi-Fi, so I had to move to the gym. So y'all bear with me. Well, Pontoon Jody. So, I guess, what's up, Daniel? I see you in here too. I'm sure, especially in all of our cat fishermen here, everybody, they should know you by now. And if they don't, they will after this. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Joe. Just say hey.
Hey guys. Yeah, my name's Joe, Chatt Cats Fishing. I want to say thanks, Pat, for having me on your show. This is, I think this is my third or fourth time being a guest on someone's YouTube channel, so it's always neat to be a part of that. But yeah, guys, my name's Joe. My YouTube channel is Chatt Cats Fishing. Most of you guys probably know who I am. I'm based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'm also a charter licensed captain that guides on the Tennessee River, specifically Chickamauga and Nickajack Lakes. And yeah, so.
Cool. See, Chunky, I see you in here too, bud. We got a pretty good group in here tonight. Mm-hmm. So if y'all didn't see in the thumbnail, we're going to go over, I wouldn't say this is probably not your most favorite catch, I believe you said, but this is one of your personal greatest accomplishments when it comes to catfishing. So if you don't mind, could you kind of go through like what was going through your head that day, kind of go through the motions, and what kind of day was going on up there? What was the weather like?
Yeah, so the catch itself was back December 2017, and one of my go-to spots. And I mean, it was just like any other day, really. You never know when you're going to really catch a fish of caliber like that, but you always, I guess, hope for it. But it was an overcast day, no wind. I think there was barely even current moving on the river, which, when you don't have much current, when you're river fishing, those blues aren't super active. But I think it was generating like 20,000 CFS. And for those of you who knows what that is how much water is being released or pumped from the dam. So 20,000 is not a whole lot, but I went ahead and went fishing anyway. I was by myself, and I think I'd fished one or two spots before I caught that big one. And But yeah, in the wintertime, I don't know, things are just a lot different than, spring, summer, and fall. Because in the wintertime, the fishing's really not all that great. It's definitely a quality over quantity type bite. So if you get one, it's for the most part, I'd say like more than 50% of the time, it's going to be a pretty solid fish. Uh, and I think that was the only one I caught that day too. But so I'm anchored up on this spot, and I think I waited like a good 30 minutes, which, is usually my max if I'm going to anchor fish in the wintertime, is just give it like 30 minutes or so. But I was anchored on a current seam, and I think it was like 30, 35 feet. And I was using cut skipjack as bait, which is one of my go to baits along with bluegill. But I was using cut skipjack that day, and I was about to reel in my lines. And if you watch the video, I'm actually standing right next to the camera, pretty much about to say, "Hey, no fish here. Let's go into another spot." But a rod just got pecked, and then it just slowly went down, and the fight was on. And I battled it for like, I don't know, 15 minutes. I was using 40-pound line and using 8/0 circle hook. And
So it actually was not a very long fight for a fish that size. It was a very short fight.
yeah, I mean, a fish that caliber, I tell people like your 60s and 70s, I mean, your 60s fight, but like your 70s and 80s and above don't really like, they don't move a lot. They don't have as much stamina as like a 30, 40, or even a 50 pounder would. They just feel more like a lumberjack when you're coaxing them off the bottom. I mean, they're powerful, but they're not going to be making super hard runs unless you have current. If there's current, then they can use that to their advantage. But given this, it was just more like just coaxing them off the bottom. And now the hard part was netting the fish. It wasn't really the battle itself. It was really just netting the fish. And that took me probably about 5 or 7 minutes just to really land the fish itself. And I had a hard time, pulling the fish over the gunnel of the boat. And because I mean, I only
Right.
weigh like a buck 35, so I'm not a big guy. And it was almost like I had to like drag them over the gunnel because
Right.
no one's going to really be able to easily pick up 100-pound class fish just like this over the boat. It's going to, I mean, unless you have another person with you to help, but yeah, I just kind of dragged him over the gunnel. And I mean, I knew immediately, like, okay, I was thinking maybe like 80 something pounds or something like that. But the girth was what made it fat. It had like a 30, close to a 39-inch girth. I mean,
Jeez.
it was fat. It wasn't very long. I think it was like 52 inches in length.
It was
Which
just
isn't,
really big around.
yeah. And to be honest with you, I think I caught that fish before. See, I've caught two 90 plus, class fish in my life from the same spot. So the first time was like around this time of the year. It was like MLK Day weekend. And I think it was back in 2016 or 2015. I caught a 90 pounder. And I noticed there was a scar on the top part of its dorsal fin. Um, and then when I caught this 97 pounder, I saw the same scar, and I thought, okay, it makes sense, I guess. Catfish are creatures of habit, and it came from the same spot. So I feel like I caught the same fish.
So you think that was a
And
resident fish, like that was his staging area, and he done put on a good 6, 7 pounds.
yeah, because it was the same time of the year, pretty much. I do best where I was fishing. I do better in that spot typically in the wintertime. And I guess they just, I mean, they're moving around all day long, right? Or different, they got different migration patterns based on the time of the year. But in the wintertime, they'll stage more in specific areas, I feel like. Uh, but yeah, that I think it was the same fish. And but it comes to show just how important like catch and release is. And just taking care of the fishery and all that stuff. So yeah,
Right.
it was definitely a catch of a lifetime, and I mean, I still think about it from time to time, and I'll even go watch the video again just to remind myself, like, just how truly remarkable, that fish was.
Right.
Um,
See, I got a comment for you. Let me go back. I had it up here a second ago. Uh, Cool Cats put on here. Let me bring it up. He said, waited 30 minutes. I highly doubt that. Maybe 7 minutes.
yeah, that's James. Yeah, yeah, most people know, like, I am a person that, I'm kind of impatient when I fish. I'm usually a hit and quit type deal, What
Right.
especially you know, when I'm fishing down trees and whatnot. Uh, it's just what I do. Usually I give a spot like 15 minutes, but I try to be more patient, in the winter months. So that way, I mean, because the fishing's a little more lethargic and, uh, slow to the bite they can be.
Okay. So, well, I
My
got,
computer just froze there for a second, so my screen went black, so I had to,
yeah, you're good.
but it's all working now. But yeah, I mean, typically when I'm fishing like down trees, I'll give it like 10, 15 minutes because that's usually a spot where there's either something there, there's not. Um, but I don't know, I mean, James brings up a good point too, like being a catfish guide, you really can't sit on a spot too long just because, you're on a time schedule and like if I have a 4-hour trip,
Yeah,
I
time is
may
money.
yeah, I may only anchor two spots and then I'm just drifting the rest of the time. But if it's like an 8-hour trip, I only have one person with me. Yeah, we can put in time and effort in looking for that bigger bite. But, you know, it really just depends on the client and, what their expectations are really.
Right. Now, did you feel like you were going to hook something good that day, or was it just kind of like another day for you?
I mean, a little bit of both, I guess. Like, when I first, I guess I got to really talk about just how good of a spot this area is. When I first fished it, it was back in 2015 in July. It was like middle of the day pretty much. And it was so hot. It was like 90 something degrees, but the current was like around 57,000 CFS. They had the floodgates spilling below the dam. And I fished it for the very first time, and I caught a 64, a 59, a 57, a 55, all in that same spot, like the same anchor. It wasn't like I moved around; it was just all in that spot. And I thought,
Wow.
okay, this is a spot that can definitely produce again. So then I went there the next weekend, caught a 50, and then once the fall came around, I caught I think two or three more in the 50s, but then it was like October 20th. I caught an 81 pounder from there. And I thought, okay, there's definitely some big fish that come through here. Like I thought 50 pounds was big, which it is. But when I saw the 80, I was like, holy crap, now that's a big fish. I mean, because your perspective really starts to change when you put your eyes on an 80-pound class fish compared to like a
Right.
50. So the 81 felt really heavy. Like I had a hard time picking that beast up. It actually fought harder than my 97. So, but that spot, where I caught the big ones, it does better when there's higher current. But the funny thing is my bigger fish, like my 80s and then the pair of 90s I've had there have come in the lower current. It's weird. Like a lot of my 50s and 60s come when it's like 45,000
Mhm.
CFS in that spot. But the 81 and the pair of 90s came when it was like 20,000. It was, I don't know, just, and that made, and it kind of makes me think that maybe I feel like a 100-pound class fish is going to have a very difficult time managing its way through very fast current because
Right.
they're sluggish, they're old, and they're going to be sitting in spots that won't require them to move around as much. Whereas a 50-pounder, they're going to move around, quite a bit, and the 60s will too. But when you start getting like those 90s and 100-pound class fish, I mean, I don't think it's very common for them to be moving around as much as like a 50-pounder would. That's just my theory. I mean, people can disagree, but based on what I've seen, what I've caught, um, I just I don't know. My hypothesis, I guess.
Right. That's kind of how I feel about it too. Once a fish gets to a certain size, their girth alone's probably holding them back from getting
Yeah,
up into these spots with high current.
and the metabolism I think changes a little bit too when they're that old of a fish. Because I mean, you got to think like a 90-pound class fish is probably going to be like around 15, 20 years old, maybe even bigger or
Yeah.
longer, older. So it just, but, but yeah, I mean, when I went out there, I mean, you keep your I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of us cat fishermen, you know, like to be in control and think, oh, it's going to be a good day, or no, it's not going to be a great day. But I've had days I've gone out where it's like it's going to be a stellar day, and it doesn't really turn out to be that great. But then I've had
Right.
days where it's like, wow, it's really windy out here. I don't think we're going to do as well. And then
We
yeah, you
literally
get
had that same situation happen this year.
yeah,
We thought we were going to destroy them one day, and then we hardly caught anything. And then another trip, we didn't think we were going to catch anything, and ended
I
up being our
know.
best trip.
And that's just where you just gotta you gotta treat each time you go out the same in a way, like have all your rigs tied up as if you're gonna catch that 100-pound fish,
Right.
or if you catch that 20-pounder. Like it's just, I think the more time you put out there, and practice, I guess, sort of say, as I like to call it, the more likely you are to eventually get the big one you're looking for.
Right.
Um, but timing's everything. So
So I seen Kevin came in here, Palmetto Cats. Jody, I see you're in here. So we got a pretty good group in here
yeah,
tonight.
we
Did you
do.
want to go over? You were talking about being ready, prepared for a big fish. So, what kind of equipment were you running back then? I know it's been a few years back. So, and if you want to go
I
over
was
that kind
using
of
the
stuff,
I was using the Shadow Cat rods back then, and then I had a B&M rod, and then I had the Steve Douglas Tangling with Catfish rod, and that's what the 97-pounder came on, was the one Steve Douglas rod I had. Yeah, so I had the Akuma Classic CLX reel on there, spool with 40-pound line. I typically use 40-pound on my main line. You know, I used to use 50, but I've gone down a little bit over the years just because I can get more casting distance. I even thought about going to 30, but 40 seems to be right at that good spot for me. And then I use an 80-pound leader. I go heavy on the leader just because I'm usually fishing around very sharp objects like rocks and then down trees. So having that more abrasion resistance really does help when you're anchor fishing. Um, and I use an 8/0 Team Catfish double action circle hook. So, and yeah, everything else seems to be fine. I use a medium action or medium heavy action rod. So yeah, that one came on the Steve Douglas Tangle with Catfish rod.
okay.
Um, and then
Now
I
I got
retired, and then I retired it just because I don't know, it's kind of a special thing, and um, but yeah,
I got a question for you. So you brought up you use the 8/0 size hook. So what made you decide on using something? Because most people, I wouldn't think, 100-pound fish, you wouldn't exactly think an 8/0 hook would necessarily be big enough to handle that. So what was your decision on?
I actually used to use 5/0. And well, bigger hooks like it all depends on the gap size, really. From the point to your shaft, I guess. But um, the bigger hooks, just like I don't know, it goes to the eye of the fish a lot. I'm not real big on that. Um, and the 8 I just felt like was very just. It's a big hook, but it's not small either. And Ty Conkle with fvcatfish.com, he had been using 8 hooks and he had a lot of success with them too. So it was kind of like, yeah, I mean, I don't think I need to go much heavier. I mean, I think there's a time and place to use a heavier or use a bigger hook. If you're using like, I don't know, a 3 pound live common carp or something, right? And you're trying to go for like a big flathead, but I mean, I've used 10 hooks before, but just didn't really like it a lot. I just felt like the 8 was just something that worked best for me, and because I can still catch small fish, and they can also handle the bigger fish. So, and it wasn't really hooking the eye of the fish a whole lot because I noticed the bigger hooks will do that. Like it'll kind of go through the lip and then out, kind of around their eye, and I'm just kind of like, I think those 8 seem to be better, personally speaking.
Right. IVJ Arnold, oh Joe is he's got a question. He says, "Any net man advice?"
Have someone net it for you. No, I mean, when you're netting a fish by yourself, you really just want to make sure you got that fish submitted, like where they're pretty much just belly up, um, and you definitely want to net head first. Um, where whenever, I mean, you guys should know this, but whenever you net a big blue or flathead, whatever, you always want to net the head first, because if you don't, if you go from the tail, then they're going to swim out of that net. But if you go, head first, the only way they can move is left and right, which they'll be in the net already.
Right.
So that would be, I guess, the biggest takeaway from that with netting a fish is always go head first.
Now, was it a struggle getting that big fish in the net?
Yeah,
You said getting him in
just
the
landing
boat was a
him.
struggle.
Yeah, landing him,
Uh,
and then get him in the boat. I think my camera had cut out though. Like, I'm very notorious for having my camera die whenever I'm filming. It's just how it is. But I think the camera died, so I wasn't able to really show me struggling to get it over the gunnel. But yeah, it was a pain. Um, but my boat sits kind of low to the water, so it's only maybe like, I mean, Patrick, what would you say how many inches it is, the gunnel from the water? Like,
it's hard to say. It's not much. It's pretty low to the water. Sometimes it can be questionable whenever
yeah, I know.
the waves
I
pick up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe like 7, 8, 8,
I
eight
was thinking
inches,
probably
10,
8 inches, maybe,
8,
maybe.
10 inches, something like that. So it's not like I have high sides on my boat, but so it made it easier to kind of haul him over the gunnel, given that my gun rails aren't very high.
Right.
So,
G Style Fishing here. It's got a question for you. Wants to know, how many rods do you use when you drift fish?
so it really depends on what type of drifting, but if I'm free line drifting with chicken, light tackle, just 3 rods. If I'm suspend drifting with my bigger tackle, I'll use 4. So the suspend drifting, you actually have a very controlled set on where your bait is and where your line is. Whereas when you're free line drifting, you really got to be careful because the wind can push your line around, and you want to make sure you have a good spread of your baits. But I'll usually 3 rods when I'm free line drifting, and then 4 when I'm suspend drifting.
Right. Now that day you were anchored, right? You were anchored
Yeah, I was anchored.
nowadays.
Yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of my bigger fish come off anchor. I think my biggest fish drifting's like 60 something, but most of my bigger ones come off anchor. So it's just how it is for me. I don't drag or anything. I don't. It's the stretch of river that I fish isn't really good for dragging. So you would have to go down to like Wheeler or Wilson Lake or something to have, you know, consistent depth, flat bottom and everything for dragging to really do good. But where I fish, it's just so rocky on the bottom and it's not really good for dragging. So
Okay. So let's see. Now I know. So that was your biggest fish, but since we got time, do you want to talk about your favorite one?
that's a good question. Favorite one was actually when I was on a guide trip when I first started uh fishing. It was a Father's Day trip with my dad. It was on Gunnersville with Mike Mitchell, Southern Cats Guide Service. I think it was like 2013 or 14, but um, it was in Alabama, Lake Gunnersville. My dad caught a 35-pound flathead. I mean, we were on a double, and once he was fighting that fish, another rod went down, and Mike Mitchell was like, reel, 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 reel. So I started reeling. It was a 55-pound flathead. But just the moment of me and my dad, like both catching our new PBs at the time was pretty cool. Pretty epic because, you know, that was something that we got to share and something that we even still talk about. Like, you know, and guys, that was before I was like really into catfishing. Like, that was when I was first starting out. And, you know, so, and if you don't know Mike Mitchell, he's a fishing guy down in Alabama. His name is Mike Mitchell. He does tournaments, and his guide service is called Southern Cats Guide Service. But he is like, you know, the true go big or go home type
Okay.
big cat fisherman. But that was probably my greatest memory. And then probably where I fish now on Nickajack. Um, I don't know. I've had some pretty nice fish. I would say the one where I doubled up on a 45 and like a 60 in front of that abandoned ship downtown where I lost my big net uh, was pretty intense, chaotic, and awesome at the same time. You know, because that 45-pounder wrapped so bad with the 60-pounder, like the line was just all knotted up, and I had to hand line that 60-pounder in, literally by
Wow.
hand. So, and then I tried to use the net to get under him, and then I got excited because the fish started going down, so I had to let line out. But instead of dropping the line, I dropped the net, you know, and I just have so many emotions going on, and um, but but yeah, I've had some interesting stuff happen for sure.
I got a couple of questions here for you. So, Pontoon Jody, she put, when you catch a 50-pound plus fish, do you notice that they hit the head or the body section more on cut bait?
I think it really depends, like, on the time of the year and how aggressive they're feeding. I will say most of the time the head pieces is what does it, but um, I'll just tell you this, like my 90 pounders came on pretty small pieces of bait. So, um, and then, but if they're feeding aggressive, uh, the head pieces seem to be what they're really wanting. But that's just kind of how it is with the headpiece. Like you're really going for the big one if you're using a headpiece on your line. It's just you're not. I mean, I think most of you guys would agree with me, but you're really not going for something under 20 pounds. You're really shooting for the stars, and you're trying to hit that home run. But I don't know, like with my 90 pounders, my first 90 came on a shell cracker piece, and I think that was a chunk. I have to watch the video again and see. But then the 97, that for sure came on a skipjack chunk. And it wasn't like very big. I mean, it's probably like this or something, you know, not terribly big, but I
Just a
mean,
little piece of bait, nothing major.
elephants eat peanuts. So,
Right. And then we got one here from Ian Titman wants to know what's your biggest fish you've caught on chicken.
that came last or this past summer, 58 pounds. I did not get it on video because the client didn't want to be filmed, which I respect. But yeah, it was 58 pounds. And it actually didn't take that long to reel in. What I did is, you know, I hooked it actually, and I handed it off to my client. I said, "This is a big fish." And I'm thinking maybe like, I don't know, 20, 30 pounds. And because, a 20 pounder on 10-pound line will run. And so can a 50 pounder. They all kind of run the same at first, on that initial run with light tackle. But then it just kept going. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to chase the fish down. So I cranked on the motor, and I mean, it just bolted like across the river. It didn't really go downstream. It just kind of bolted across the river from where we were. And once I caught up to him, it was just steady pressure. It was like the fish was just coaxing downstream along the side of the boat, and I thought, okay, 30, 35. And then the longer it went, I was like, yeah, maybe 40. But that one probably took around 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes once I was able to motor down or motor, chase the fish down
Right.
once we caught up to it. So, and the guy did a really good job, like, finessing the fish a little bit, allowing the fish to run when it wanted to go, and putting heat on them when it was giving up. So it's not easy to catch a giant like that on 10-pound line, but a lot of people don't like the chicken stuff sometimes, but I've been using chicken since 2013, and I don't use it when I anchor fish. I typically just use it when I drift fish on the light tackle stuff because it's usually a spawning method I do. So in the months of June and July, when the catfish are on the nest, I'll just free line the entire time. I won't even really anchor a whole lot. I mean, every now and then, but most of the time I just know, like, guys, we're not going to catch a big fish off anchor when it's like when water temps are 84, 85 degrees, unless you're starting at early morning at sunrise or if you're fishing at night.
Right.
But you got a shot at sunrise, but then as the day progresses, you just want to be drifting. With the free lining chicken rods. So most I've caught in the summer in a day is like 63 catfish. So
Whew.
I know it works. It's because it can definitely pay off. You get a lot of smaller fish with the chicken, but every now and then you get
You've
that.
done it a few times now, had a big fish on.
Yeah, I caught a 51 pounder below the dam. When I had Billy Clabo and Alex from Realistic Fishing with me. It was our first drift right below the dam. And I was like, yeah, guys, we're going to be catching some 5 to 10 pounders, and, just do your thing. You know what to do. And then I hooked it. It was like, I was like, I need some help. I'm going to have to get on the trolling motor or the motor to chase this fish down a little bit. So, but we all took turns fighting that one. And that one was 51 pounds. That was back in, I think, 2017, 2016, something like that. But the biggest one on the light tackle rod came July 31st at 58 pounds.
That's a big fish.
Heck yeah, it is.
So I got a question. So I'm going to ask you this question here, and then I'm going to let you kind of give everybody your idea on what it takes to land, to hook, or even see a fish that big. If you can kind of give them some advice on hunting a big fish, and then I think we'll turn it over to let you just answer questions whenever you see one that you can answer. So this question here is: if you can only use one bait, one style hook, and only one style or size weight, what would it be?
Let's see. So one bait would definitely be bluegill. One style hook would probably have to be a so it just depends on that. Let's see. Only one style, size, weight, what would it be? I mean, I probably use like a flat, like a flat bank sinker, probably at 6 ounces, and the hook would probably just be a circle hook, I guess. But the bait of choice hands down would definitely be bluegill. I mean, I do believe in skipjack and shad, and as much as I use those baits, but bluegill increases your chances of flatheads, and that's what is important for me, is trying to get on those flatheads. Like my very first fish this year, 2022, caught on Saturday, was a flathead on bluegill. So I
That's
just
a
I
good way
just
to start it.
I just published that video like a few hours ago. So I mean, it's just the skipjack. I've caught flatheads on skipjack, but it has to be like super fresh. And then also, I've caught most of my I've caught most of my flatheads on skipjack in the spring. Okay, but in the summer, fall, and winter months, it's usually on the bluegill, and I think it's just because the flatheads are feeding pretty heavy in the spring.
Mhm.
Um, but bluegill, hands down, is my favorite bait.
Big old bluegill head. That's my favorite.
Oh yeah, I mean it's deadly combination. You put a bluegill head with a demon dragon or like a rattle, that's a vicious combination. You're definitely setting yourself up for success on that. So,
Cool. Well, before we start the actual question section, just give everybody some advice or words of wisdom on, because everybody wants to catch that giant fish. I mean, I do the same thing. Everybody wants it, but not very many people have caught that magnitude of a fish. So, what would you say is the formula that works for you?
um, be patient and put in the time, because you have to learn the river, um, before anything else. And I'm blessed to be fishing the Tennessee River, just because the fishery down here is probably the best in the country, I'd say. But I think you just gotta work for it, and you gotta want it, and it's not going to happen every time you go out. I think a lot of people think they come down here, they can catch their giant, and that sometimes can happen. But just like any river, you're going to have dry spells in it. It's just how it is. But I think the more time you put in to something, I think the more you're going to reap the benefits and reap the rewards from it. It's just like being an athlete. You practice every day. You do the same thing every day. You're training every day. And eventually you're going to see your hard work pay off. So I just think you got to focus on the process and not the outcome as much, because when you focus on the process, the outcome will eventually show eventually. And you're going to fail a lot. Like, it's just part of learning. You're going to fail and fail and fail, but as long as you don't lose your enthusiasm, and you just keep going, then that's what's going to make you successful, is just having that fierce passion, I guess, behind it. um because it's easy to throw in the towel and give up and be like, oh, this is not for me, I'm done. You buy all this expensive stuff and gear and everything, you just feel like, oh, it's not panning out. But it will. It's just going to take some time, and but I can't, and I do want to say this, like, I can't tell you how many times I've told this to people, but be random, and fish random spots. Like, try to fish new spots every time you're fishing. And I've done that with clients before, where I'm like, hey, we're going to fish a new spot. And Patrick, and it's just, it's just so surprising sometimes when you fish a new spot. You're like, wow, we poured in a 40 pounder. And then you mark the spot on your GPS or fish finder. But you just got to continue to learn, because I mean, I'm not a know-it-all, and I don't claim to be. I try to be humble, and I mean, it's just something I just try to live by, is continue to learn. And because once you stop learning, then you really stop fishing. I mean, so you want to really continue to learn as much as you can, because nobody has these fish figured out. Just when you think you do, that you're like, what happened?
Yeah.
So because the river changes a lot, and current changes, you got all these fronts moving in, weather changes, and it's almost like you got to relearn the river every time you go out there. So that's just how it is.
Yeah, it's definitely a process, and that's something I think we're all figuring out as we get into this more.
Right.
Um, if I could one of my mods put Joe's link up here for y'all to check out his channel? If any of y'all have never seen his channel, please go subscribe to him and check him out. He's got some of the best catfishing videos that you can get on YouTube. He's one of, I can safely say, the legends of catfishing on YouTube. And he's got more than just one or two big fish on there. You'll see lots and lots of videos of big fish that he's caught, fish that he's put people on. It's really been a good channel that you have grown over the years, and you've definitely produced a lot of trophy, size fish out of this. While one of y'all is putting up his link for us, I guess if y'all want to, we can go move to the question side of this for next 10, 15 minutes. Just if you got any questions you'd like Joe to answer for you, you got any kind of tips you need on gear or whatever, just put it out there, and hopefully he can answer them for you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Bobcat was pretty quick with that link.
Oh, Dad.
Oh man.
That's funny. Yeah, I see a lot of people sharing the link. I appreciate it, guys. Muskrat, I saw your 74 out of Nickajack Dam. That was pretty neat, huh? So you know what it's like. I see Joe's comment. Yeah.
You see it? Disadvantages on having a big guy on the boat.
I will say, being a fish, I mean, he does kind of bring up a point in a way, like being a fishing captain, we do have weight limits on boats. I think for my boat, I can only have 610 pounds of people. So it's 5 people or 610 pounds. So I try to be very careful with how many people I take out. I choose not to take no more than 2 people. Okay, that way I'm within the safe zone somewhat. I mean, I've been over before, but my boat is safe. It's inspected. Coast Guard's inspected it. It's a good boat. It's a very stable boat, but I can't take more than 2 adults. I have before, but it's like people I really know, and if we're within that, 610 pounds or under total weight.
Right.
So,
Because your boat's what, 18-foot or
17.
17-foot?
Yeah. So I keep telling myself I'm going to eventually upgrade, but I don't know. I think what I would need to upgrade is just my motor. I mean, it's a 40 horsepower. I could probably use like a 60 to get more speed and everything. But I don't know. River fishing, it's not like I'm fishing big lakes a whole lot. It's just, river fishing. I like having the, low profile boats on the river. So it just seems to be more river friendly, I guess.
Right. So Muskrat Adventures, Roger, he wants to know, how much do you rely on your electronics when you go for big fish?
Um, Not a whole lot. Muskrat. Right now I just have a down scan. I don't even have side imaging or anything. I actually do. I just bought a Helix 7, which has the side imaging and down scan. I'm going to put that on here in the next few weeks. But I don't get too buried into the concept of marking fish. I think it's just, for me, I am just focusing more on like what the bait's doing. If I'm marking bait, then yeah, I'm definitely going to be fishing there. But I'm also just focusing on, you know, drop offs, ledges, down trees. Down trees is kind of one of those, you can't really motor over a tree unless it's a submerged tree, but a tree that's sticking out from the bank, kind of serves as a current break a little bit, you're kind of thinking to yourself, there's a shot that something's here. We're going to give it 15 minutes. My biggest fish last year of 2021 came by. It was one of my last guide trips of the year. It was a 74 pounder, came out of the down tree. So it was kind of like, we wait. I think it only took 5 minutes actually, but I think marking fish becomes really big in like open water when you're fishing like a big lake and you got a big open area. There's not much change in the topography, there's not much change in contour lines. That's when I think like, you know, marking fish can become more of a thing. But where I fish, Chattanooga, you got bridge pilings. You just got so many like focused objects to fish, But I hope that kind of answers your question a little bit.
Well, if you think about it, on a couple of our trips that we went when we were just fishing just for, we didn't mark any fish whatsoever around structure. We decided to try it, and we ended up pulling up some good fish that they weren't even showing up on the down imaging.
Yeah, I just don't get too caught up in it. I like using my Navonics on my phone, and I'll turn on the relief shading, and I'm like, huh, there's a little black trench that runs through here. Let's fish that black line, and then I'll anchor it, and then oh wow, lo and behold, yeah, we got something. So that's just how I treat it, I guess.
It's worked out pretty good so far.
Yeah, not bad. Daryl, please don't sit on Joe. Daryl, do not kill me.
I've seen how he fights big fish. I ain't worried about him.
Right. I've had Daryl on my boat before, so Daryl's a good guy.
And one of the things about your fishing line, you're not using super expensive fishing line either. You're just using what is it, the Trilene big game?
Just buy it from Academy or Walmart or something. Yeah, it's like Berkeley big game Trilene and nothing extravagant. So it's just I don't know. I like to save money when I can, but I do believe having a good rod is important though. Especially if you're going to be targeting, big fish. You definitely want to have something that's going to handle the big fish. And I tell people, be careful what you wish for. You want to use a rod that's at least like a medium heavy action. That's what I use. Some people use heavy action, especially if you're fishing the Mississippi. And when that current's like really ripping, you'll be thankful to have a rod that has a good backbone to it.
Right. Roger's got another question for you. It's a pretty good one. And I believe this is one that's kind of me and you have talked about before. How has becoming a guide affected your love to free fish, if any?
That's like a double-edged sword. Like I like guiding, because you have a chance to make someone's day, when you have a chance to really influence somebody. And if you guys didn't know, I'm also a school teacher. So, but yeah, I mean, you have a chance to influence somebody, right? So I feel like if I can provide a great fishing experience, it's not so much about like catching the one big fish. It's really about providing a good experience for them. If you can do that, that's a success. In my opinion. But it does come with stress though too, because like, there are some people who are like, hey Joe, I really want to break my PB. And you're like, okay, well, what are your expectations besides that? Like, is it, hey, my PB is 50 pounds. Can we break that? I only maybe catch like 10 fish a year that are 50 pounds or bigger. I'll just be honest. Like, I don't catch a lot of 50s as some people think I do, but and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But it does get stressful because you can't control the fish biting, you can't control the weather, you can't control a 15-20 mile per hour south wind that's going to kick you in the butt. But what you can control is your effort, the attitude you put behind it. Your clients see that. They want to see you working hard to put them on fish. And granted, I've never been skunked on a guide trip. I've always been able to make something happen. I mean, there's been times where it's like we killed the bass, like we caught so many smallmouth and largemouth, but we didn't get a catfish. And that's where, if I'm doing those combo trips of bass and cats, like you fish 3 hours for bass, 3 hours for catfish. I've had it happen in the past. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. It's like once in a blue moon, but I've had it happen where it's like we absolutely annihilated the bass, but we couldn't get a catfish. So, but that's pretty uncommon though. I mean, every now and then you have that happen, but the client leaves home happy, because they caught like a 5 pound smallmouth, so which is a trophy fish in any water. So I just think like I just really try to think of the experience, providing a good experience for them. As long as they go home happy, I'm happy. I mean, seriously, like there's times where I'm like, oh man, we didn't get a 30 pounder. But they're like, "Oh my gosh, I caught a 20. That's my biggest fish ever." And you're just kind of like, "Wow, okay." You just everyone has something different. Expectations are different. So,
Your view is
um,
jaded because of all the big fish you've caught, bud. I'm telling you, some
right.
folks, man, a 20-pound fish is a fish. That's a lifetime fish.
Oh yeah. And I tell people a 20-pound blue is I mean, 20 to 30 pound fish is big. Your fun size fish are like 10 to 18 pounds or something. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing with guiding is providing a good experience. I mean, I don't have a lot of time to fish by myself. I mean, usually January and February when I'm in wrestling season, I I choose not to guide just because I need a break and I gotta have the fire going in me for the spring because I book up like crazy in this. I'm already booked out for the spring, so and I got to make sure I got that fire in me to kind of get motivated and get going again. And because, by the end of the summer, I'm burned out pretty much. Like, because I'm
Right.
usually full time in the summer when I'm not teaching. So, but, it's all good. I love it. I mean, it's just, it's I think I said this to somebody, but guiding is an easy thing to hate, but eventually it kind of wears on you and you eventually begin to love it. Because I've seen a lot of people start guiding and they give up like after a couple years, and but it's like just let it. You gotta. You eventually begin to love it. I think you're gonna have good days and bad days. That's just part of it.
I've always felt like whenever somebody becomes a guide, you've got to love seeing somebody else catch a fish just as much as seeing yourself catch a fish. Because to me, that's the biggest part is you're no longer the one catching the biggest fish. You're now helping somebody else catch the fish of a lifetime.
Right. So you just never know when you're gonna make someone's day. Like I took Lamont. I think he's in the chat. I took Lamont and Rita, and it was a very slow day. But we caught that 48 um, towards the end of the trip, and it just made everything better. Like, and Lamont's been with me several times, and he's a great friend, and I appreciate them booking a trip with me. But yeah, I mean, it's just you just never know when a big fish is lurking around either. So you just always got to be prepared.
See, we got time for a couple more questions. So this one right here, uh, they said most of the catfish I catch are 15 foot or less of water. Where do you catch the majority of your fish, deep or shallow?
Um, I catch most of my fish like 20 to 40 feet. So, and it really just depends on the time of year as well. But 20 to 40 feet, I feel like you're gonna catch something there year round. In the summertime, I'll start up below Chickamauga Dam where it's like 10 feet or under, and I catch a lot of channel cats up there with a few small blues. But most of the time, 20 to 40 feet seems to be where I catch them. And you gotta think like catfish are more structure oriented, at least where I fish. Like, so if there's a nice down tree and like 7 feet of water, chances are, at some point there's going to be a fish there. You know, I don't know. It's just I feel like you got to fish a little bit of everything. Fish shallow, fish deep. But if you're going to fish deep, you're probably going to want to fish the ledges off that deep spot, because sometimes they're just hanging on that. So I just, like I said, fish a little bit of everything.
I will
So
say on one of our trips, Joe, who's in the chat, you'll remember this one. We actually decided to throw bait into a spot that was only 3 foot deep, and we ended up pulling one out almost 30 pounds.
yeah, I remember that, and that's just, I think that was a day where we had like a lot of fast current, and there's like a little creek or something back in there, and yeah, it was like 3 feet. Like as soon as it hit bottom, it was like, oh, that's it.
And then
That was
pulled the
it.
biggest fish of the day out of there. I feel like we should have seen that fish sitting there. It was so shallow.
Yeah, I mean, I do. Whoever asked that question about fishing different depths, like I fish literally everything. I don't really fish like 5 feet though, but I have done 7, 8, 9 feet. Um, but typically 20 to 40 feet is what seems to be more consistent for me when I'm anchor fishing, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
17, 18 feet's also good.
right. Let me clarify. So when we threw that bait in that shallow water, we didn't realize it was that shallow when we casted it. So when Joe, he was putting, I think the three baits to the left were sitting in like 20, 25 foot because you put out 5 rods and then you threw one in front was like in 15 foot or something. And then you threw one straight to the right just to have one out there. And it just like, when it hit, it just blocked. It was there. And so we decided to just leave it instead of reeling it up and having a rod in. But it turns out the big fish come off of that 3 foot of water. It was a random cast, y'all. It was just a random, it was that shallow. We just left it.
You just never know, I guess. I mean, it's just you can't count anything out when you're catfishing.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, sometimes the most random places end up panning out. That's why I like it. That's why it's fun to try new spots, and you just never know.
Cool. That I think that's probably going to wrap it up for tonight. It's getting close to 8. I appreciate everybody being in here. I'm sorry if I didn't call your name out. Trying to talk with Joe and trying to keep up with questions. The chat was rolling pretty good, but I'm glad everybody can make it here for our first Monster Monday. We plan on having a lot more. I believe the next one is going to be Roger with Muskrat Adventures. Joe, as always, bud, I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on here. It's always a blast hanging out with you. So,
but I guess we'll go ahead and leave it there. Thank you all for being here. It's been really great. I'm glad you all showed up, and I hope most of y'all got your questions that you were wanting answered. If not, you could always go to one of his videos on his channel. You can leave him a question there, or I'm sure they might have a way of getting in contact with you if anybody has any kind of question. You can look him up on Facebook. So there's lots of ways you can get in touch with him if you need to. Of course, you could always schedule a trip with him also and let him put you on some of those big fish.
That's right. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. It was awesome getting to know some of y'all.
Okay, well, that's it, y'all. Everybody be safe with all this crazy weather, and we'll see y'all on the next video.
We'll
Peace.
see you guys. Have a good night.